Hello, everybody. Welcome to Friday. I was going to come up with a name there real quick, but I had nothing. First thing that came to my head has already been used. So we're continuing my journey here with Captain Gremlin. So I worked a lot more on the head. I just did not have the time to get further on down the body with him. But you can see up here I started putting all the scales in his head. So I want to talk a little bit about that. I want to show how I'm going to use this kind of to start driving my painting. So I want to show you, I'm going to start polypainting him a little bit just to give him some color. I would like to have some color in there for him. I'll bring in some reference images in again for us as well. But obviously I'm sure you're all aware of, we did an update to ZBrush as well. So there is now version 2020.1.4. So I'm sure you're all aware of that because if you've launched your ZBrush already, it tells you that there's an update. So you just got to run the little Z upgrader, or if you prefer, you can get the full installer on your My Licenses. What's going on, BT Sculptor? Welcome to an invigorating another stream here with me. So I appreciate you guys taking your Friday evening, afternoon, whatever it might be, to go on this little fun journey for me. So again, to recap today, we're going to look a little bit at how I started putting all these details in, okay? I'm going to show you a little bit painting technique, because there's some particular masking stuff that I really like to use, especially for some painting, but it could also really warrant some great sculpting techniques as well. And then as promised, I'm going to show you guys my approach to how I'd start rigging this guy and making him move if I wanted to start putting him in a pose. So we're going to go recall that old wonderful from the very first stream, the rig that I made. Obviously he started from this. So I've modified my original one a little bit here, but I want to talk to you even about, show you how I modified it as well, to just make it fit more with the sculpt, because obviously my original piece, right, from when I started with, was very simple, and then as I started sculpting, I've changed a lot of things. I've changed some proportions, I've changed the arm length, right, I've made shoulders differently, and whatever, all the blah, 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 all that, okay? So everyone obviously can see me fine, and it looks like my audio is good to go. Looks all right. We're all fine and dandy, so let's get into this. And by all means, every time as we're going along here, we know how I like to operate on tangents, so by all means throwing questions up, I'll answer what I can answer for you. But I'm going to start with just kind of looking at the technique that I started working at with the head here, okay? And show you kind of what I did here. I did something, as a matter of fact, on purpose with this. So obviously the scales aren't very strong, and that's actually on purpose. For me, because I want to play with the ability of changing the heights of these scales, especially, you know, maybe I would want maybe the smaller ones, maybe I want them to sit a little bit higher, or vice versa, I want them to sit a little bit lower. So right now I've got everything on the same level. Good to go. And yes, there is a clubhouse tomorrow, so Solomon and I will be streaming tomorrow at 12 noon. And then there's also a clubhouse, I know you guys asked, with Mr. Joseph Drust and I next Wednesday as well at 11 o'clock Pacific time. Next Wednesday, that's the 10th. Man, I can't believe it's already going to be the 10th of June. Where's life gone? Mr. Sanson, I don't know if you missed it. I'll be looking at rigging today. We'll be looking at rigging today. So I want to start first with just this and just give this the idea and the concept of what I'm doing. Because actually what I did here is I put these on layers. And this is on purpose for two real big things for me. Especially when I'm going to start diving in. And I hand sculpted all of these scales. I didn't use an alpha. So I want to show you that technique, because last week I showed you guys a quick way to sculpt some of this and then copy it and use it as alpha. I'm going old school with this. I'm doing mostly hand sculpting, minimal alpha. You know, there'll be times I'll use some alphas for sure, but I'm going the old school way of maybe doing this where we're sitting hand sculpting this. So I put these on layers, right? So it's going to allow me, in essence, to turn things off, i.e., I can turn these right off, okay? Because number one, again, the production that we've been talking about here, I'm making a character, right, that has all this information. And if you remember, we're talking about the head, right? I'm already sitting at 12 million polygons. If I went up again, I'd be around 50 million polygons. So if we look at, again, the lowest cage, i.e. the lowest subdivision level here, I did remesh this, right? So it's sitting around 12,000 polygons. But when I did this remesh, I didn't have a lot of this other sculpted detail, i.e., as we go up in here, right, I've started to put like details like this in. So I like to actually remesh the model again. Like I'd probably remesh it at here at 3 million is probably a good enough point to remesh it. And the reason why I would like to do that is what the algorithm's going to help us do is try and find this sculptural detail elements in here, right? So this is one reason why I put my scales on a layer, is when I go to remesh this, I'm not going to want the scales to be in the remesh, because when we turn these scales on, right, there's a lot of sculpting going on in there, right? So the remesh is going to sit there and try and find all these cavities and peaks and trying to make the topology follow that more. I don't need that. So it's actually going to be for the worse in this case for what I'm doing for me. So that's one reason why I've put my scales on a layer. Okay. No, I'm gonna be going into Polypaint after I do this, Mr. Sanson. So I'm talking about just my sculpted element here, why I'm using layers and why I'm using the scales, and then we're gonna get into painting after this. Right? I want to do a little bit of painting because I think there's some real great masking techniques, and then we'll end with some rigging stuff. Okay, so again, I'm doing this because I know some steps down the line that I'm probably going to want to do. So I'm setting myself up for that, in essence, is what I'm doing. I always say I look at sculpting kind of almost like playing chess. You know, it's been a long time since I played chess. You know, I was on a chess club when I was a kid. So there you go. So what I want to do is think in that sense as well. So that's why I'm, in essence, using a layer. I know, or if I don't like the scales, it's a simple thing. I turn the layer off, and then I'm back to my sculpt before I started doing all that layer stuff. Okay? So there you go. So a great question coming through is if you're using Dynamesh, you're not going to be able to use layers. Right? Because every time you re-Dynamesh, you're changing the vertex or in the vertex points and changing the topology. When you have layers, the topology can't change. So i.e. you can't put edge looping in, you can't add just topology to this, because the layers are looking at, hey, there is 12 million vertex points, right here. So let's think of the layers kind of like a morph target, and we're going to get into this too. Think about it, okay, there's this version of the model, and then the layer's hosting another version of the model, right? And what it's doing is going, okay, there's 12 million vertex points, and then there's now 12 million vertex points in the layers, and we're just trying to find what the difference is in those 1,200 points. So this is why you can't use Dynamesh, because when you're using Dynamesh, and you go to re-Dynamesh, okay, you're changing that vertex. So then the layer can't match to what's on the model. Does that make sense to answer your question? I did, John, add the inception tangent. It's not complete, but I did add some inception for you. Thank you for that. I want to make it better, though. All right, to your question, Defu Kanzan, does that make sense? No, that doesn't happen with Z-remeshing. In the sense, I've now Z-remeshed my model, and then now we're good to go, right? But yes, for what you're asking, if I'm going to remesh this again, then yes. But I'm going to show you what I'm going to do, right, to get around some of that as well. Okay, so let's just first look at another reason why I've added layers here, okay? So that's one reason. And I kind of started making a second layer for in the back. Another reason is, like I said, I kind of want to transition between maybe the scales. I want to do maybe a couple things, but I also, right now, the scales aren't sitting high enough. So this is nice, is that I have a layer, right? So I can actually click on these sliders and I can dial back the scales, right? So that they're almost gone, okay? Obviously, we can have some crazy fun here, and I can make these go negative, and now they're digging in, right? So you can flip it, right? To be positive and negative is one thing. You can control the height. Now, like I said in the beginning of this stream, I left these kind of a low, right? So what I want to do is also use this magnifier slider. So this is where it really comes in handy. So this slider right here, whatever your selected layer is, this slider is an intensity driver. So I can say, you know what, let's double the intensity of that layer. And you can see now, boom, they pop more. And then I can go, you know what, 3. Then I can go all the way up to 5, where I can now go, and now this, looking at this model, is that just excessive? Too much? Like, are they popping up? It's, again, this is all going to come down to, what is my end goal result? What is it that I want to do, right, with my model? So me, again, I definitely want to look into seeing this out of wood. Is what's in my head right now. And I actually was talking to my wife. I might do some FDM printing. I might have put a couple of these gremlins around in my office to protect my office. And of course my wife goes, oh Lord, great. Okay. So the only thing that was changed, by the way, John, for your question in 1.4 is there was an update to the way the licensing system works. That's it. That's all that's changed in 1.4. So just so you know, you will not be able to reactivate any other version except for 2020.1.4. So as an example, if you guys are using 2020.1.3 and you deactivate it, you will not be able to reactivate that one. You won't be able to now activate any other old ZBrush. You can only reactivate now 2020.1.4. The layers are not UV dependent. I don't even have UVs on my model. And in fact, that is such a good question. Oh man, it's a tangent, but kind of not a tangent. Everybody, this is such a good question about Mr. Sanson's question about the UVs. When you're using layers, okay, you got to think, like I said in the beginning, my model's 20 million, right? And now I've got a layer that's 20 million. I got a second layer that's 20 million. So technically, right, there's 36 million polygons of information, right? Because I'm using layers. If you throw UVs on that, now you've also got another section of a model where the UVs also have to go to 20 million, right? And then now if you're doing more layers, every time now that's the polygon's got to go to 20 million, and then the UVs also got to 20 million. So I would personally say, like, UVs can be added at any point in time in the model. I personally do not UV my model until I need it, period. However, obviously I understand in a production pipeline, there's UVs that you need to maintain in the model. I.e., again, though, I can delete UVs, and like a month from now, I can re-grab the model that has the UVs and reapply it to the model. That's easy. Okay? So, here we go. And I don't know what's going on with the Nightbot. Don't pay attention to that. I like your graphic. I don't know. The actual wizard. Don't listen to the Nightbot. I don't know what the heck's going on with that thing. Okay. So again, this is on a layer, right? So this is my process. I'm just going to now delete these layers because I want to show you kind of what I did here, okay, to get to this point. So I'm going to go back to having no layers and the model. I want to touch on this, okay, and then I'm going to use this also as my benefit for polypainting. So the other thing that I also did besides this layer is I actually stored a morph target, okay? So you can see there's a morph target here that I can switch between. And you can see there's a target with the scales and a target without the scales. So I'm just going to delete it and be back to normal. So this head has 12 million polygons, okay? But I'm sitting at 3 million. For me, for doing these scales, it's good enough. I don't need to go any higher than that. Because just going to 12 million, I know I'm going to get 12 million of polygons. It's going to be more there, but I'm getting the details I want. You saw we were just looking at the scales at 3 million. They were giving me what I want, okay? Question coming here. Do you think it is possible to learn how to model and animate in 4 months? I'm stuck on drawing and I have to finish my course in 4 months. Yeah, that varies from person. I would say it depends how you're breaking it down and how you're working, and if you're in a class, how that's being all broke down, right? Listen, I don't think you ever stop learning, in all honesty. I never do, right? And that's kind of why I'm forcing myself kind of do the hand sculpting of the scales. I'm learning a lot going through that process, and that's all just going to benefit me as I move on in my trying to sculpt more things. Okay? No, you're going to be able to sculpt. We're going to be able to, you can make maps from this. So your other question, can you only sculpt an input from layers to displacement maps? So are you asking for like normal maps? So normal mapping you can make vector displacement maps, regular displacement maps. You can make texture maps as well. All those can be generated from a layer. So, okay. But 4 months, by the way, back to the 4 months, that's tough to learn modeling and animating. I will tell you this, though, like back in the day when I was in college, I had a class that was 4 months. I had to do a complete animation short, everything. So I had to model everything, texture everything, and animate everything. And I did it. So that's why I'm like, it's possible. It's possible. Okay, so this is what I'm going to do. I know when I'm going to start sculpting this, I'm doing kind of my hand sculpting, like, trying to just create this, right? What's nice about this brush, our clay buildup, it's going to give a little bit, some design element. It's adding a raised portion to it. What I don't like about this is I am not getting some of these scales all in the same height. I don't like the fact that it's kind of doing this right now. So obviously if I keep playing with my focal length, that will change up. I don't like kind of, it's nice. I'm going to use this brush down the road. So I took the approach, and again, there's no right or wrong for this. It's just, this is a personal preference, I think, that I've decided to go down with this. So the brush I prefer to use, and this is why I'm going to be bringing in the Morph Target, is the layer brush. Okay, and the reason being is because I'm doing these by hands, I'm changing the scales sometimes as I go. Okay, so I'm trying to create myself, again, a workflow that I can change things up kind of non-destructively, right? So what I mean by that, now that I'm using a layer brush, right, I can do this, right? And you can see the layer builds on top of layer on top of layer, right? It's just building on top of itself on top of itself, okay? So the first thing I want to do is I want to find the intensity kind of that I want to go with as my base intensity, right? So that's kind of the base intensity, okay? I went a little bit lower. I think I was sitting like around 30 or 35. Yeah, I was sitting somewhere around there, okay? Because remember, I'm going to end up putting this on a layer, so I'm going to be able to bump this up more if I want to, right? Or if even if this is too much for me, I can dial it back if I want to as well, right? So, I'm going to just go with, I like this. So, why I'm going to bring in a Morph Target, okay, is when I store a Morph Target, when I now do a layer brush, you can see no matter how many times I sculpt over, right, it's all pretty much the same level, right? It's not stacking and stacking and stacking and stacking upon itself so much. And then when I go anywhere else on this model, right, it's all sitting in the same height. So this is one reason why I decided to use the layer brush, because I knew I wanted to use a Morph Target and I wanted to have the ability, okay? So for example, this is what I did now, and this is what it's going to open up for you guys if you decide to go a workflow like this, okay? So let's just quickly start putting some scale. So literally I just started, like, this is the beauty of organic. They don't need to be perfect because it's organic and it scales. So I started going big on the top, right? And this is why I'm kind of taking my approach of by hand. I can kind of just quickly make some decisions here as I work, right? Yes, this might be a little more tedious than just grabbing an image and a texture. But again, like I just said, I think you never stop learning. And I take these advantages to go, you know what, I'll probably going to learn something from here that I'll be able to process later on when I start to sculpt, right? So as I'm going along here, right, I'm going to get smaller and smaller, right, in here, and get smaller and smaller scales, right, as I go here, because I feel it right here in the wrinkles, and when it gets close to the ears, the scales should be tinier. They shouldn't be as big as they are on the forehead, right, or the top of the head. Okay, so this is pretty much what I did the entire model, right? I just, again, yeah, it's more work, but you know what? I'll take it. Now, what I've opened myself up, besides just having the ability to, now I have everything on the same layer, right, and do this. So you can see as we pull back, that starts to look a lot better too. Is you can see I can switch between no scales or scales. Okay, and when I'm in this mode, if I'm like, okay, I accidentally say, you know what, I want to add more, right? Oh, I messed that up. You can, in essence, erase that. So I can switch to a morph brush and morph it back away, right? So this is kind of giving me a little bit of a non-destructive workflow, because at any time, I can switch to a morph brush and even redefine these. So this is the main reason why I've decided to go with a layer brush and using a morph target, because I want to open up these possibilities to myself. Okay, because this is, again, remember, I can maybe transition, like I can slowly transition scales now. Like I can dial certain scales back, right? So it creates a very nice workflow for me to just, because I know I'm doing this all by hand, and as I work, I might want to change some things up as I'm going. Okay? So, with that said, I'm going to delete the morph target that we have right now. Okay? I'm just going to say store morph target, and then now I'm going to create a layer, right? So you can see this requires for me to be sitting at the highest subdivision level to make the layer, right? So I'm going to go up, because I have one more level. Again, I got 12 million polygons, right, in this. So now I can make a layer. And when I make a layer, you see that the layer is in record mode. And you can see when I hover over it, it has a little pop-up thing that says Polypaint, Shape, and Target Masks. So in essence, a layer can host those three things. So you can host Polypaint information, any color information that you want. You can host Shape, is pretty much sculpting, right, which is this. Okay. And then target masking is just masking. You can actually put masking in here, okay? So I'm now doing a combination now where I've got a morph target and I've got a layer. So my morph target's off right now because morph targets are only available on one subdivision level per mesh. So I made that morph target on a different subdivision level. So I'm going to walk down, and what's unique now is even though I'm not at the highest level, that layer, even though you guys can't see it right now and you can't touch it, that's on purpose. We actually are still allowing you to add information to the layer, even though you're not sitting at that highest level. And now you can see I got my morph target back, right? And then now I can sit and start doing whatever it is I want to start sculpting on this guy and start. All right, start sculpting now some scales over here, right? And I'm just going to do a couple, and then I'm going to reload my model with all the scales. But this, in essence, is the workflow that I'm choosing to go with, right? I think sculpturally and just like painting and drawing, there are multiple techniques. Hence why, if you look at painting, we have things like different styles, right? Because there's different types of ways to paint, just like there's different ways to draw. There's different mediums to use to draw. So I see sculpting as that too. There's just different ways. There's different techniques. So this is just one technique. I'm not saying, hey, this is how you should do this. I'm just saying I'm choosing to do this, and I'm giving you guys the reasons why I made this choice. Again, we're playing chess, baby. I'm trying to think down the road what I'm going to be doing with this guy and this model. So I've chosen this workflow because it gives me the most flexibility for as I'm working on the model. That's just the route I'm going. You can use it, you can take it, you can say Paul's gone nuts, he's off his rocker, which probably wouldn't be the first time you guys have said that. I get it, it's cool. My own daughter sometimes, 4-year-old, shakes her head at me. It is, you know, it's the way I work, man. It's the way I roll. Okay, so I'm not going to sit here and sculpt the whole head here of scales with you. I'm just giving you guys the general understanding. Now, right? So now I have these, right? So they're sitting at a certain height and a certain depth. It's a morph target. If I walk back up to subdivision level 12, because I was actually making these on the lower subdivision level with left polygons, I know immediately when I walk up the next one, these scales are actually going to get updated and smoothed just a bit. And I like that. This is another reason why I chose to do these details not at actually the highest level, because I want to take advantage of how things, when you divide in ZBrush, add a little bit of a smoothness to them, because that's how the Catmull-Clark algorithm is working. So I want to take advantage of that actually for this. Okay? In the US, you call chess players the preps. I don't know. Do they? What's going on, Dark Knight? Thanks for coming back. Okay, and then, Jim, I will show you, since skin pores, you asked with realistic skin pores with surface noise, there is something I like to do with surface noise for skin pores. I'm going to show you a trick, okay, that I actually like to use that is useful. And then George is definitely making a great recommendation with the extractor brush, which I showed in last Friday's stream. Okay, so because it's on a layer, I'm in record mode now. If I click to the right of it, right, now that's just turning the layer on, right? And now if I turn off my eyes, this part disappears because that's the part that's on the layer, right? And then now I have this workflow where, okay, those aren't popping enough. Give me some more, you know, maybe twice. Do I want to go twice the, or do I want to go 4 times, right? And see, they'll come off his head more, right? So all this I'm doing to benefit myself, okay? So let me get to that actual tangent now, which, again, it's kind of a tangent. It's not an inception tangent, John, but it's a tangent about the skin pores and someone brought up with surface noise. Here, let me show you a little trick that I find very beneficial. And in fact, I put it in my book that I released now. I don't even know what it is, like 7 years ago. Because sometimes it's a really nice, quick and dirty, easy way to get skin pores, I think. So let's just give this some little love, okay? So we're at 1.5 million, right? And don't forget, we could do all this with a layer too. I love using layers with surface noise. So you can see this noise, when we zoom in, gives us, you know, a relatively some kind of nice, you know, noise happening. You know, I would recommend playing with this a little bit, okay? And maybe do something more. Let's go high first. Let's do something like that, okay? And we'll make the scaling a little bit bigger, okay? So you got this, right? So i.e. an orange, okay, to start and maybe have a little bit of skin details, right? You got to think about this. You're going to be putting this in certain spots and you want it to maybe punch a little bit, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply this noise now because I want to use something to my benefit to actually throw a little trick that I like to use in this. All right, so if you guys render, which is Shift R, while you're looking at a surface noise, this render now is what you're going to get when you apply the noise. Okay, so when you're just looking at the noise, you're navigating around, think of it more as like a bump map. Okay, so we're visually just trying to represent you, but it's not actually displacing the mesh, right? I.e. the silhouette is not changing. It's still a perfect spherical shape, right? So even if we were to come back in here and we'll go real crazy with this, right? You can see the shape's still spherical, right? So in essence, there's no displacement of the mesh happening. Now, when you guys render, though, we are actually displacing the mesh based upon the noise. So you can see this noise is crazy, and you can see this is now not a perfect sphere. It's got spikes all over it. Okay? So number one, use this to your benefit, right? This will help you realize what real intensity do I want on this model. Okay? So I can do a render kind of as a test to see, oh, I got to move the model to remember my old shadows. And to do a test to see, okay, yeah, that's good. That's enough. That's enough pores going on right there. Okay, so now that I have this, I'm going to say apply to mesh. Okay, and when I apply this to mesh, you can see we got the result that I got when I rendered. And you can see it's still perfect, a spherical shape. But if we get in close, you can see a little bit of that silhouette. It's not a lot, right? There's little bumps here and there along the silhouette because now the mesh is actually being displaced and pushed, right? So here's what I like to do with this. I like to do, say, a noise like this, and I like to switch to a brush, and two brushes in particular. Okay, so I'm going to go to the brush palette, and I'm going to go to smooth. Okay, and there's two brushes in here that are amazing, and it's smooth valleys and smooth peaks. So smooth peaks, okay, you double click on it and it's saying, okay, now when you hold the shift key, Paul, that's going to be now your new smoothing brush. I'm going to say, okay, great, skip that note, whatever. And then now, when I smooth, there you go, right? So you can see the little pits, right, are not getting smoothed out. So I'm smoothing out a little bit of this noise, right? So and obviously pressure sensitivity, I can control how much of that smoothing do I want to get done. So I really like this for some quick, like, just think about like around like in people's nose, right? The pores will be a little bit bigger on like the noses. That's why we get a lot of our zits and blackheads and stuff around the nose, right? There's certain parts of the skin will have bigger pits. So this is a great way to do this. And I think when you guys are doing this, I'd highly recommend switching to a material that you have a specularity, because that'll help you see the pits, right? Because realistically, if you're going to end up doing something that's a skin, no matter what it is, you need some specularity to it. We have a little bit of specularity. Like, I don't have this much specularity, right? This is crazy specularity right now. If I was trying to do more of a human specularity, I would definitely knock this specularity down a little bit, and I'd probably open it up a little bit more to say something. It's starting to go a little bit that route. Maybe even knock it down a little bit more. So there's just a slight specularity in there, right? And this is going to help that, right? So the other brush then is doing the opposite. So this is smooth peaks, this is smooth valleys. So this is doing the opposite, right? And this could be a good thing for you guys adding some kind of, like, I'm going to use this technique on my Gremlin. I'm already telling you that right now. I'm going to throw some like crazy noise on him, and you can see these little specks will be there. So for me, that's like perfect for skin. So watch, if we throw something a little bit more, with a little more punch in here, let's grab some spray. Let's go ahead and do this. And then now let's just do something like that, right? And now switch. Like, so for my Gremlin, I probably want to have a little bit more of that happening in certain spots. Right? There's going to be times I'm going to want that to happen, right? And then, of course, here we'll do, we'll keep this so you guys can see that, okay? And then let me put another set of it here. Okay, and then now let me switch back to, since I've now loaded both, to the peaks, right? And now you can just see, look at that. This is if you want to get some crazy skin. Like, this is great for creatures. Look at that. Like, I might even put a little bit of that like in his rib cage, just to have some like bubbling of a skin there. This is the cool stuff, man. And this is where also the painting part I get into and the certain maskings I like to use play a very big role. Okay? So keep in mind here, though, if I would have added this all to a layer, I can bump and play with the bumping of this. I can dial it back, dial it up, or I can get rid of it all together. Okay? Does that make sense to everybody? You can't change a brush type. You can't do that. You can't change the base type. You can't do that, Sad. So whatever the brush type is, you can't go change that. That's like internal code of the brush system. So if there's a different brush type you like, you got to go select that base brush type and build a brush if you're building a brush. Okay? You can't just go randomly tell it to switch. That's like deep down the rabbit hole of code. Okay, Manuel, there is a difference between VDMs and IMM brushes, 100%. Okay? For a VDM, right, again, when we're talking about VDM, now, John, if you're here, this is 100% an inception tangent, right? 100% that, okay? So a VDM, people, stands for vector displacement mesh. So if I want to throw a nose on here, I can just grab it and I get a nose, okay? And it's giving me all the undercuts, which is all the cavity in here, right? And you can see this is even picking up all the little specks. This is the big difference now, is this, all it's doing is it's taking that nose from the brush and saying it's a nose, and it's a 3D shape, i.e. alpha type, right? So what we're doing is that nose is being remembered in the brush, and we're just applying that nose to the mesh that already exists. So in essence, the topology that I'm working on is just being displaced, right? And pushed out. Think about, I'm almost like I have live displacement mapping right now in the brush. That's pretty much, if you want to think about it that way, that's the easiest way to think about it. Okay? But then it's got undercutting allowed, right? So what I mean by undercutting is, say, something even like this, right? Where there's a half sphere inside of a dome. All this empty space in there is undercutting. You can't do something like this, right? On some model like this, unless you're using a VDM. Okay? Where an insert mesh brush, number one, it can't be used on subdivision levels. So right now I've got 6 subdivision levels. So you can't use it on that, right? So I have to delete the lower. And then when you switch to a brush, so let's even switch to human parts, and there is a nose in here. The difference is, this is just adding topology, right? This in essence is a completely separate piece of mesh from the sphere. As you can see, right? That nose is all different topology. So in essence, that nose isn't being used to displace the geometry of the sphere. Okay? Does that make sense? John, I think when you're doing likenesses, I'm not a good person for likenesses. We do have a very exciting ZBrush Masters artist coming up. Hossein Diba, who's amazing at likenesses. He's actually going to be one of our ZBrush Masters people coming up in another season. So he's the best person to watch. But for likenesses, I think it's a combination. I think a lot of people use scan data, for sure. And then a lot of people use some of the approaches that I'm using here. Okay, so there you go. Okay, so going back to, let me reload my, I'm going to keep this because I'm going to use this actually in the poly painting that I'm also talking about. Okay, so let me reload my gremlin that I have because I deleted everything. Let me reload my guy. Where's my mouse? Come on, get over there. Let me reload the one where I'm working on him and going at this, right? Okay, so what I'm going to do is say, all right, this guy's got layers on the head, right? Okay, and what I want to do right now is start throwing some painting, but I can even use this sculpture. I'm going to show you in painting because it'll help you really see what some of these cool masking techniques I'm about to go into can do for you. But 100% we can use these sculpturally. Okay, so for the sake, I'm going to bump up these wrinkles. Or wrinkles. I'm going to bump up these, the scaling that I did here. So let me bump this one. I'm going to go 4, I think. Yeah, I think that's good enough. I think that's got enough pump to it. Pump it up! Okay? So, what I'm going to do first is I'm actually going to turn off the layers. And I want to start with a base color, okay, for the gremlin head. So let's do this. Let's bring in something. Instead of me sitting over here and picking a color, let's actually grab something. So I'm going to import a texture. And let's import my one gremlin image that I've been using, right, as a reference this whole time. Let's bring this guy in. And let's bring that in. Let's make the opacity 100%. Okay, and then I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. We don't need it this crazy. That's good enough. Now, if I wanted to match kind of these color skins that they've decided to make this gremlin, I'm going to be able to pull color from this. So this is where you guys got to decide when you're going to start adding some color just to give them a little bit more life. Again, layers is kind of, painting is like doing it within layers and building upon itself. Okay? So, the head looks like a dried up lake. I like it. John, have a good evening. Have a delicious day. So, this is in spotlight mode, which I've already talked about. Okay? But what I can do, right, is hold the C key, and you can see my color picker is actually grabbing color, right, from the model. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a light color as the overall base color of my gremlin. Okay, so I'm going to take the approach of all the light color is going to be the #1 layer, and then I'm going to be using, like, you know, oranges and browns for different things, and then I'm going to start adding some green and so forth and so on. So the opposite way would be, okay, I want to pick a green color as my base, right? And then you're going to go the opposite direction now. You're just going to now, that's your darkest color, and then you're going to go lighter, 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 and lighter, and lighter, and lighter as you work. I'm preferring to go, I'm going to go with, I want light color. I'm going to go the opposite. I want to pick my lightest color that's going to be on the model. Okay? And which is going to be this what's in his chest. I'm going with that. Okay? So I'm going to hit the Z key. All right? And now I'm also going to go in the brush palette. I'm going to come in here into samples. And I'm going to turn off the spotlight projection again, because right now I only want to use this image as just a reference for myself. And obviously you can see I'm going to use it to grab color from. Okay? And yes, Yetkin, colors now will work with layers. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing. Okay? So, I have this base color. So what you have to do before you start using layers, you got to apply a base color. Okay? Because what's in the layer is the coloring that you're putting over top the existing based color. Right? I would definitely not use this material. If I'm going to go to painting, me personally, I switch to this material. Okay, because then there's no real shading value here. It's really bright, and you're going to see your color really well. Okay, this is a personal preference. Again, I just prefer this. If you're going to be using materials like this, right, there's already some gray tone to the material, and it's kind of pretty shaded dark. So I'm not really getting a good look at my coloring. So if you wanted to use this, you can. But I'd probably come up in here and bump my diffuse on this, so it's brighter, right? Me personally. And then this material, I also had changed, if you remember, the specularity. And this guy would need to have tighter specularity. Right? So see, I can have this material. Okay, so again, this is a personal preference, but the one thing I would recommend when you're going to go start painting some stuff, I would pick a bright one. So me, I always pick skin shade 4. Like you can see, that's a big change there, right? It's really looking at, and you're going to see why here in a second why I'm picking this. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to my paintbrush. All right? this will automatically have just only RGB turned on. So I'm going to go color, and I'm going to say fill object, and now there is my base skin tone color, right? And so you can see that's perfect for all in the ears. We have that skin tone in this particular model going around the eyes, a little bit in here. And again, this is going to be my gremlin, so I'm not going to go exactly what's in this image. I'm just using this as kind of like a push guide. And right now I'm using the kind of grab colors, but eventually I'm going to do my own thing. I know that. Okay? So this is now filled with the color. You know this, okay? Because now you can see my subtools updated with the color, okay? And then my brush here turns off the Polypaint on and off, okay? So with this on, if I change any color here, you can see other subtools are changing because they don't have any color filled on it. But the head's not because it's been filled with my base color. And see if I turn the brush off, now his head goes blue again. Okay? Color on color. Okay, so this is going to be my technique now. Because I'm in a layer, I've got a base tone color. I'm going to start using my layer to benefit me. Okay? So I'm going to turn these layers on. And this is right now only has sculptural detail in it. Okay? And so what I'm going to do now is put the layer back in record mode. Okay? So I'm going to have a layer here, this top one. I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to be back in kind of now record mode. And you see the scales drop down because when you're in record mode, you're not going to get the magnifier to pop up. Okay? So that's one thing to know. Like if you're using this magnifier, that magnifier is only available when you're actually looking at the model. Okay? So, what I'm going to do here now is say, all right, I have this paint, and now let's pick another color. So I'm going to hit the Z key. Let's hold now the C key, and let's grab, yeah, a little bit, maybe that little tonish brown. Hit the Z as in ZBrush to come out of spotlight. And I'm going to go a little bit lighter, I think, here. And then now I'm painting, right? And you can see I'm just painting, but because I'm in record mode, that paint is actually going in the layer, right? And then when I turn this layer off, you see the paint disappears. Okay, so right now, I've got a layer that is hosting paint, right? And sculpt. So what I might want to do is, okay, right now I want to look at the model this way, and I actually want to make a new layer on this, okay? And then my paint now is only going to be hosted in this. So as I'm painting, right, I'm just painting now a new tone through here, okay? So there are a couple things I like to change up when I start painting on this, because this is just like, okay, I'm just like, it's like back being a kid. It's like, okay, I had a marker that's this color, and now I have a marker that's this color, and it's just like, okay, great, now what? Okay, I want to start bringing a little bit better quality painting in this. I want some change. I want to start using the sculpt to do this, and I want to change up my paintbrush a little bit. There's things I like to do to my paintbrush. So number one, let's look at what I'm going to do with my paintbrush, okay? So I like to change my paint to color spray. This is really why this stroke exists, honestly. It's really the power of this stroke. It's meant for kind of painting, really, is its strongest point. It can definitely be used sculpturally. Now, when you switch to either one of the sprays, so there's color spray and then there's spray. So obviously color spray is meant for color painting, okay? And so what I want to do here, right, is use these settings right here. Okay, so let's just see what these settings are doing. Okay, so I'm going to pick now a different color. I'm just going to pick a green because I think it'll help show you guys visually a color that's really good, right? So you can get a green. But if you look closely, right, the greens that I'm getting, they're not all the same color. See, look, there's even a little bit of yellowish orange in the green, right? So can you guys see that? Like there's some bluish purple here. I'll push harder to even show you more of that, right? See how it's kind of, there's color variation happening in there to me, that's one big thing for painting, okay, is having that color variation in there, all right? So what I like to do now is play with this. Okay, so number one, I might want to play with the flow. So if you're dropping your flow down, right, it's just the flow of, think about this. This is old school, like when they did this Gremlin, they used an airbrush, right, to paint. And then they would do that in layers. They would grab one color for your base color, then they would go to another color and start fading that in, and go to another color and start fading that in. Then they would use like stencils. They'd put them in front of the airbrush and boom. So I'm taking all that idea and I'm showing you guys that digitally for me, okay? So the flow is just in essence, how strong of a flow of a brush do I have, right? So you can see it's kind of now broken up more. It's not so blotchy big, right? You can see how that was very much more solid than this. So this is what the flow is doing for me, okay? Then the other thing I like to play with is my placement. Okay, so if I go all the way up, this is going to be placement like that, right? It's kind of spread out, right? You can see the placement's kind of scattered a little bit more, right? And then if I bring it way down, then you can see the placement, all the little spray dots are like, they're sitting on top of each other more, right? So I like to have a little bit more displacement, I guess, placement. I like to spread out my dots a little bit more. That's also going to make some of the painting come together, and you guys are going to see this. I'm just laying down base foundation right now of this painting techniques, and I'll show you guys in the grand scheme of things how this all comes together. Okay? And so I've got now a placement is I want to spread those dots out. They'd be spread out a little bit more. I don't have so much flow. So it's really going to use my pressure sensitivity to say how strong a painting do I want to have done. The other thing that I like to play with is the color. So this is where it gives the color variation intensity. Okay? And if I crank this all up, you can see it's like a rainbow. Right? So now it's like seeing that green, and then it's what we're doing is going, okay, you're here. Now we're going to go all the way over here and all the way over here. And everything within this range, we can grab colors for those colors, right, with the same intensity, right, because this is not moving as much as this. The dots, though, the built-in brush ability will change some of the intensity for you, okay? So you can see that this is ridiculous. I don't want that much color variation. That's nuts. So I probably want to go, so what I do first is I find a nice color variation that I kind of want. Here, that's pretty good. This is going to help make skin look a little more realistic when you paint. This is kind of like creating that subdermal and epidermal levels in paint. This is what you want to do. You don't want to just paint like this. So look at the difference, right? Just that alone, right? This is just solid, like, paint it. This is like, oh yes, let's get a little artistic here. Okay? So this is, again, just playing with this to do some hand painting, okay? So, and then the last thing that you guys have is the scale. That's the scale of the circles. Do you want them to have variation? Do you want them not have variation? So obviously, if you knock this down now, right, you're going to get different skin, like, coloring, right? So you can see the dots. They're all relatively one size. And if I start upping them a lot more, you can see there's more size variation there. Okay? So for me, my preferred paintbrush, when I'm actually going to poly paint, I prefer something more like this. Because I want ZBrush to do this. Because, again, I'm going to be painting in layers here. So things are slowly going to get pushed back and pushed back and pushed back, right? And realistically, if I'm going to do some kind of skin tone to anything, you should lay down primary colors first. Like this even goes back in the day when I did oil painting. I would do that first in my oil paints. I would lay down major primary colors. Obviously, your reds, your blues, and your yellows, right? So the benefit here is if I switch to like a yellow, right? And if you remember, we've got this base color, and I did that on purpose. So where we should get yellow is where more bone is. So I would probably put a little bit of yellow in here. Okay, because that skin means that there's probably some bone close to the skin here. So wherever I have these spikes sticking out and a little bit more bone structure, I would put some yellow there. Okay, because there's not going to be so much subsurface scattering as much in that area because the bone's closer to the skin. Right? So I will do something like this. Okay, and maybe there's some bone a little bit in here, but then it's more cartilage, so I'll put a little bit of yellow through here. Okay, and then through here, I'm going to put a little bit, some more yellow through here. I know it's going to look like a clown and blotchy right now, but that's all good. I'm working kind of in stages here. All right, and then since this has got all this is like close to the skull, I'm going to throw some yellow in all this right here. Okay, so something like that, and then I would switch to like a blue, and it's okay that it's going to be crazy blue. I'm going to go a little bit more in that world for him. And then for me, I put blue where irritation is, or you put blue where you have like cavity. Okay, like you'll have blue like underneath our eyes quite a bit. It's more of a purple, and you're going to see what's going to happen here, right? But we'll have a lot of blue in our nose as well. You'll have some blue in our ear, right? So I would probably hit the nose as well with some blue, right? And then I would say, okay, I'm going to put a little bit in the eyes, below the eyes here. I'm going to go with a smaller brush size. And again, the pressure sensitivity is allowing me to kind of control this flow a little bit. There's going to be some irritation through here. So I'm going to build some blue up through there as well. Just a little bit of some blue in there. Okay, I definitely want to put some blue in the ears. Okay, let me go with a little bigger brush size. Just a little bit of blue there. Some blue there. Right, and some blue in there. Okay. You know, for us men, we shave if we do, which clearly I'm not really shaving much right now. This is I like to call lazy face. So I'm going to put some blue across here because we shave, because wherever we shave a lot, you're irritating your skin a lot, right? Okay, so there's where I would put blue as well. And then to little Chico, yeah, that's right. Cavity where there's some blood flow. Absolutely. Vessels, yeah, put some more. I would 100% put some blue in there, right? Okay, and then now I'm going to go to red, and I think that's where also the blood vessel thing that you're bringing up is really going to stand out, right? So, and then this is the beauty. When I start putting in red, and because the brush I'm making, I'm going to get some purple happening actually in there. Because now I have a combination of, you know, the blue mixing with the red, and I'm getting some purple to start popping up in there. So I'm going to put some red along the lips. He's puckering up, ready to kiss. Right? So you can see it starts looking like a clown. I definitely want to put some red in the ear. 100%. I want to put some more, get some red. That'll help me with the subdermal, epidermal approach in here. I'm going to put some red in there. You know what? I want to get some blue in this cavity right there. I'm going to hold the C key, grab the blue now. I definitely want some more blue in this cavity happening here. Whoops. Okay. Something like that. Okay, hold the C key. Grab some red again. Let me push it that way a little bit more. And now let me bring in some more red through here. Okay, something like that. Let me get the other side now. And this is where I stop working symmetrically when I'm going to start doing this process in painting. It's going to make it look better, I'm telling you that right now. Because when you're painting, the symmetry part's really going to stand out paint-wise. Alright, so I definitely want some more blue through these cavities through here. Okay, so like I said, he's looking like a clown, right? It's going to happen. Don't be too worried. Again, just like sculpting, it's a process here, right, that I'm doing. Okay, if you remember, I made a base color. Okay, so I can grab that base color at any time I want. All right, and what I now can use this base color is a way to start pushing back some of this clown look to it. So what I'm doing at this first layer for me is now not just the base color. I'm using a layer now to kind of create like a subdermal coloring here. Okay? So as I now start reintroducing the base, things will get pushed back. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say, okay, as I'm doing this, I don't want such a strong RGB. I'm going to slowly start pushing this back. And you got to remember, I'm going to start creating, you know, some greens and some browns in my model. So I'll go a little bit smaller, right? And you'll notice that when I now start bringing that default base color into this, and you got to remember, this is on a layer, right? Things are going to start being pushed back for us. And again, it's low intensity. I'm just trying to create a base color. And you can see that skin now has got some underlining color in it, which is really nice. I want that subtleness that's happening right now, right through here. Right? And so we'll go in here and we'll push the ears back a little bit more. One won't make it so strong out here because it's going to be thinner. And then add some base tone in here. There. This is now where my years of watching Bob Ross kick in. There. Happy little trees. Okay, not so much out here. Right in there. And start working my way back up here on the skull. I should have put some blue in here. That would have been a good move. To put some blue. Let's throw some blue in there. Actually. I want to throw a little bit of blue in here because there's some cavity in here. Because I want to get some purpling on the top of my skull through here. So I'm going to put it actually where the scales are smaller, which is going to help even accent these scales a little bit for me. Yeah, there. Happy little brush strokes. I don't know, whatever. Just go with it. And I'm gonna put some red, a little bit of red in this too. I want a little bit more purple tone coming through there. Okay, let's go back and get my base color again. So the C key gets me that base color. And then now again, I just start pushing this all back. So it's very rainbowy, but the minute you reintroduce that, this is why I made that base color, people. That's why that base color is not white. This is the main reason why I'm not making white my base color. Because in the skin, I want to have a little bit of subdermal coloring happening in the actual base itself. Right, so something like this, right? I really love what's happening over here in this ear. I really love that. Okay, this is the point. This is where if I'm painting by hand, this is kind of, you know, layering. Now the beauty is we're digital, and this has now been all placed on a layer. So this is why I kind of like make my paint, if I'm going to do this, on a separate layer, if I'm going to embrace my layering, because then if I don't like that painting, I can wipe my hands of it. Right? And go, you know, that's not working for me. Okay? But even though it's on a layer, okay, what's really cool here is if we go back in record mode. So right now it's on. And if I click the little circle again to the left, it's back in record mode. Right? I'm going to get a swig of water here. So I can even erase paint when it's in a layer. So what I mean by that is, let's just do something a little extreme. This down here, this part right here, right? If I now, all I have to do is hold the Alt key, right? And you can see I'm actually erasing the paint. And then this is also, because I'm holding the Alt key, is using this color. So now watch, let's add an element to this. Let's switch to this color. And let's throw like a more of a darker brown tone, and then now start erasing, and you can see you can get a very cool little transitional thing happening through here, right? Look at that. That's pretty. Like that. Look how natural that is. It's nice and soft. It's naturally happening. I really, really like this. This is, it's, you know, this is the beauty of organic. You know, compared to, I think, hard surface is a little bit more involved, but you can still use these techniques for hard surface for sure, right? Right, so maybe I wanted that kind of element at the tips, right? But in essence, if I turn off spray and I just go freehand and we go 100% intensity, you can see what it's doing, right? It's painting, and then my brush has a roll off, okay? So if you guys make this have a negative 100 focal length, you can see it's just straight erasing, right? And then obviously what might be a good idea for you all is throw an alpha on this, right? And then you can have an alpha, right? You can even say, how about I throw an alpha like this on it? And then now look at that, right? And because this is starting to look pretty cool, because I didn't just blanket base color this with that beige tone. I started adding that subdermal coloring. That's why I did that. I don't want to call it a clown pass, because a clown pass is something specific, but darn it, it's a clown pass. Okay? Where do you let those underneath colors surface more? Okay, those underneath colors, I would let surface more. Definitely where you're going to have more subdermal, like in the ears. Like, that's why I'm really liking what's happening with his ear, especially this ear. Because a lot of that color should be pushing through. Okay, and I'm going to show you my next step that I'm going to go in is to make this look even cooler. Okay? And then what I also want to do is probably like in the nose, I'd say around the eyes. Just pick up a mirror, and honestly now that you guys have seen this technique, I challenge you all, go stand in front of the mirror now and really look at your face. I'm telling you right now, you're going to see like purple and reddish tones that you probably never noticed before. Maybe you have. I don't know. But that should give you the idea. Just look at your face and you'll see where should you have more of that red purple tone, where you're yellow, right? Right here, this zygomatic bones, there should be more yellow there. Right? That's why we're kind of emaciated and not feeling well. That's why our skin starts getting really yellow. There's really all that, we're getting closer and closer to our bone, right? And so there's not really good blood flow. So then it's getting more and more yellow of the skin, right? Honestly, that'd be one good way to do it. Just go look. But I'd say definitely around the eyes, in the ears, in the face here, in the mouth, for sure you should have more popping, right? But I'm doing a gremlin, so there's certain spots I want more things to pop as well, right? So I'm having liberty on him. Okay. So where this becomes nice, let's just stay in the ear. So we have the ability to erase. Awesome. Great. Okay. You, of course, would have this ability without layers. You would just switch your color to your base color and then go from there. Right? But you can see I can even now repaint now. Right? And now I'm actually using the base color, right? Again, the combination. So I can then say, do I like that? Do I not like that? Okay, so I don't like what happened there, so I'm going to undo and I say, okay, now let me even throw a little base color in here and make little dots happening through here. Guys, this little subtlety stuff goes a long way to make a cool paint job. I'm just saying. Right, I'm going to accent a little bit more of the base tone we got through here. Right, and you can see there's kind of now different shades of values. Because when you hold the Alt key, we're automatically switching to the secondary color for you. Automatically. Okay? Does that make sense? So we're erasing, but right now I'm using like an alpha. Right? So I'm going to go back to my color spray with no alpha. Right? And then kind of just erase some of the coloring in there. Okay. So the next process that I find very useful and very, very helpful, okay? This is where I started to get into the really fun masking techniques. And I'm going to tell you right now, there are, in particular, 3 types of masking, okay, that I really, really love about this, okay? And that's mask by cavity, mask by smoothness, and mask by peaks and valleys. So let's just start with cavity. Okay, so I'm going to go straight default. 2 blur, 100% intensity. I'm going to use the default cavity curve. I'm going to say now mask by cavity. Okay, ZBrush is going through, looking at that 1200, and you can see now only the cavities are masked off. Right, so you can see all in here now we're getting masked off cavities. Right, and this by default is going to give me a pretty cool way to watch. I'm going to flip it, and now the cavities, okay, are all unmasked. So if I say, okay, you know what, I want in the cavities to have a little bit darker color going on, for sure, and I want that little bit darker color. So I'm going to hide my mask. So up here, there's a view mask, okay, and the shortcut's Control H. So right now I'm looking at the model paint-wise, but there's actually a mask on there. Right? And now I'm going to say, let's pick it around. I'm going to start with, say, this brown tone that we've already got going. I'm going to go a little bit smaller brush size. And I'm just going to start slowly painting that in. And you can see I'm only painting where there's cavities. Right? So that brown tone is going to actually help bring out a little bit of the skin pouring that I've done, but painterly. Right? So wherever that is not painted, that starts to pop a little bit more. Okay? And then now I can say, all right, let's also smooth some of this back a little bit. Okay? So let's finish this. Let's finish this. Come on. Come on. Save the project. Why this is saving Yetkin? You take the same technique with dark skin as well. Like, you know, any type of shade of skin is going to have some subdermaling, right, on it. You got to take the same approach, right? This is, in essence, going to be dark skin. But this process is a building process, right? I don't go straight to dark color. You can see here, I'm slowly just upping and upping the coloring. And I started with, here's my brightest color, and now I'm just going to slowly move up and darker and darker, darker and darker and darker and darker colors, okay? So when I'm going to smooth, the first thing you guys should be, number one, right now I have the smooth peaks selected, right? So I'm going to switch back to the smooth brush. So I'm just going to grab the regular smooth, bing, okay? And up here, while I'm holding the shift key, I only want color change. So I'm going to turn off the Z add. And so I can kind of just even blur a little bit of that, what I'm putting in here, to do this. Right? So, and if you guys really want this to start standing out even more, okay, go darker, right? So if I go really dark here, let's go like super dark here, and I start painting this in, right? You can see how dark this is getting, and I'm still using the spray, and that means I'm getting different color tones. So underneath here, it's gonna be a lot more dark. There's not as much light getting there, right? And that'll help push out my cavities of this even more. Okay, and then now I like to just slightly smooth some of that back. Right? So the cavity brush really helps for stuff like this. So obviously, you guys can play with this, right? So I can say, well, let me get a different type of cavity. How about if I just change the focal to 0 and hit mask by cavity? What do I get? And now you can see that is a very different type of mask. Right? And now you look, see this is pretty cool, right? And I'm inversing the mask. You guys can even blur this mask by holding control and clicking once, and now I've got a blurred mask, right? And then now I can say, I'm going to say, all right, the cavities are this color. Let's say now let's start bringing in maybe some kind of greenish tone through here. Okay, so Control H. I'm going to grab a green. Again, I'm going to work from my lighter up to my darker because that's the choice I've made here. Let's not so much. Okay, and then now I'm painting some green elements through here. Right? But because I have a cavity mask, you can see the cavities are not being touched, but then I've made a very subtle change starting to happen. Like, I'm not going to be able to take this guy and complete, like, finished. But I'm kind of showing you the processing that I like to do, right? So now maybe I would say, all right, inverse this mask, and now the cavities are opened for me. Okay? So let me hide that, and now let me go maybe with a little bit, just so you guys can see, with a little bit darker green now through here. And I'm just creating a blending starting to happen. It's a process, man. This is not something that's fast. Of course, you can just grab a texture, right, and just paint with a texture. I'm showing you guys kind of painting this up, right? And you can see the skin tone that I'm starting to get in there. It's starting to happen. So I'm just going to find multiple greens that I'm going to be using. So really, the best thing to do would probably make an image that is in essence, your palette of color. And then you can just keep grabbing that palette of color. Okay? And you can see this is kind of what I want to start having to skin. I kind of want that spotting to start happening. Okay? So, I want to embrace that a little bit more. Okay, so let's see. The green's also going to come up into here. Let me inverse the mask. Yep, let's do that. And put a little bit of green now through here. Just start slowly building that up. Yeah. Okay, now. You got to remember, guys, also, I'm looking at a very shiny material. So we're literally just looking at painting right now, right? So this is why I like to use other masking. So mask by smoothness is a awesome, fun one to get instant, just cool details, all right? So I'm going to say just the default mask by smoothness. Okay, so this is looking at the smoothness of the model, right? And creating a mask based upon that. So this creates some subtleness like that. Like that is very nice. Here, let me flip it. So you see that? Look how nice that is. That's just certain spots. There's just some nice subtle things happening naturally on the mesh, right? So I can say C key, and then let's maybe go a little bit darker in there. I'm going to hide my mask, and now I just want to use a little bit of some skin tone. And if you don't like too much color coming through, right? This is why we're talking about this, right? You would have to knock down, do you want, what kind of color variation do you want? Right? So this is more straight up the color that I'm selecting, but then there's a mask involved, right? So I'm not just straight up painting, right? And then do a little smoothing, a little blending of that. So your smoothing's blurring. And now you can see there's levels of difference happening here, right? And so if we look at the mask here, so maybe right in here, I want to keep a little bit of that white tone for me. So I'm going to get rid of some of that green and bring back some of this tone color through here. I'm going to want that to pop a little bit more through there. Okay, and then I'm going to say, all right, let's grab a green. And now let me just green that up more. And the contrasting colors and variations of the colors is what's going to start separating things here for me too. But because I have a mask, I'm not just straight painting, right? So you see that? What's happening through here is more just being driven by my mask approach. Okay? And so what's nice here, people, is playing with these two sliders. Like I can say make a bigger range, make the fall off maybe less, and then mask my smoothness. And now you're going to get a completely different mask, right? And then this mask, right, is going to be, if we look at it, like you can see right in there, like this kind of stuff that's happening here. So let me inverse it. So you can see the little cracks that are now are only exposed. And then you look at this, see all this, just certain peaks. So let's just say, for argument, I want those to be like a very dark green, let's say, okay? And you guys could grab an image and do the same thing. I'm going to hide the mask, and I'm just going to go pretty strong with this so that this just shows up, okay? I want it to actually show up. Oh, I clicked on something else. Save. Save. And we're saving. And we're saving. This is the time where I look at the questions now. If this was an art test, how soon could you get the character finished from start to finish? If I had the luxury of only being able to sculpt, that's a good question. It probably would take me maybe a week total, start to finish, maybe. If I had that, if that was my time and that's the only thing I'm sculpting on, it's tough to say. You know, I should probably track the number of hours. I haven't really worked on him like a ton already. Like it's not like I'm 100 hours into him right now. That's definitely not where I'm at with him. I would say probably total number of hours I probably worked on him. If I had to throw a real dart, maybe only 20 hours so far. All the sculpting I've done. That's about it, if that, I would say. I'd say probably this whole model, like I said, it should probably take like a week, maybe. I'd say maybe 60 hours at most. This model should probably take. A real good sculptor, like somebody way better than me, could probably get this done even faster. Like a Rafael Grassetti or like a Jose, right? We're talking about Jose Tipa. He could probably get this done a lot faster than me. It really varies. Hold on, I'm just loading my guy. And we're loading, and we're loading. So, that's a tough question. But to give you an answer, I think, like I said, I've only been working on it for maybe 20 hours. How do I place and have material on each layer in a subtool separately? Okay, you can't put materials in a layer. We don't allow that. We only allow painting. We only allow sculpting and masking to be stored in a layer. Okay? But that doesn't mean you can't put two types of materials. Because that's also what's going to change this guy too. Everything right now is one material when we're looking at this guy. So that's very different, right? There's going to be times here where I'm going to start doing different types of materials for him, like his eyes and all of this, right? And that's going to make all the realism. I'm just polypainting right now. I still haven't gotten into rendering techniques and all that, right, with this guy, right? So here we go. So I'll show you something. Speaking of the materials, this can be a little bit of a tangent coming up, okay? So, but let me first just go back to this masking because I really want to show this to you guys. Okay, so again, the mask by smoothness is a great way. So I'm going to do a mask by smoothness. Okay, so right now it's really just one skin tone color up on the top for the most part, with a little bit of a subdermaling happening there. Like this, I would never be able to paint naturally like that. So having this ability to give a masking like that is awesome. So maybe at the top here, I want maybe a little bit of brownish tone there. So I'm going to flip and I'm going to go a little brown, something like that. I'm going to hide it. And I'm just going to start, whoops, I don't want to sculpt. I don't want to sculpt. But you guys can see sculpturally what this can do for you too. Look at that. Like, boom. You can get something like that sculpturally. Like, right, that's a great way to get just some different sculpting, right? And you might want to maybe blur the mask once and then, right? It's like this is what I'm going to be doing to change up the leveling of the skin of these scales. This is how easy it's going to be for me. It's like this, right? And then you can see that's going to create a better variation as well. So I want to punch these up more. Punch the little ones need to be a little bit more punched up than the big ones maybe. And the big ones just have a little, like, look at this. This is awesome. The mask is really what's pushing this to give that look. It's the mask that's helping me, right? Because there's masked ridge right there, right? Because if we look at the mask, you see there's a masking there, right? So now if I switch to my paintbrush, I'm just taking this same approach, but painterly, right? So now I'm just painting in this color, and let's again go to the color spray, right? And if I hide my mask, the edges, right, are not going to get this color. So if I go here real extreme, right here, you can really see what that's doing, right? You can see there's parts of it that's not getting masked. And then I can flip it and say, I don't know, maybe that's going to be like a green tone, hide that, and then now that's a green tone that's in there, right? And then now this starts layering that brown with the green. I throw in a little bit of some smoothing, i.e. blurring, and you start getting just natural paint effects, right? But you got to play with this. This is awesome. So you can go the opposite. What if I turn up the fall off? Okay, and I do another mask this way. So now my range is 20, right? And my fall off is 200. So look at that mask, right? And then especially like look at it in the front of him, and like look in the ear. Like this is just because I've got some sculpted detail here now. I can flip this. I'm going to blur it once. I'm going to hide, and now maybe this green tone. And then this is why that first layer I did had that crazy clown pass, as I like to call it, because once you start getting into this, like all these colors in here are slowly gonna really blend together. Very nice, right? And don't go too harsh, because if you're going with too much with one color, that really stands out, right? Okay, and there's nothing stopping me from, again, grabbing the base. So if I just, here's the base color, right? There's my base color. And then going on here and saying, okay, let me push some of this back. I'm going to clear the mask. And now let me just push with the base color a little bit of that back a little bit more. Something like that. Okay, and then I can say, okay, what if I went with a smaller range and a higher fall off? Right? So telling you guys, it's just an experiment with these two sliders, boom, 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 and you get like a very completely different looking mask, right? It's gonna happen. Like now this is all, look at all those, is all masked up. And then now I can just paint, what if I want this to be a certain color now, right? I don't know, let's just for the sake of argument, let's throw some red in there. Right, and then now put some red through there, red through there. Right, and then now I'm going to say, okay, let's go back to that green that I was using and push it back. Push that red back a little bit. And it's just a building up process for me. And then now this is what I'm getting, right? So you see, I like what's happening in there. I like what's happening in there. I like what's happening there, right? So peaks and valleys is also an awesome one. So just clicking the defaults alone, like this is pretty cool. Like especially like this kind of stuff. I love what's happening right here, right? And like say right in through here, I love what's happening right in there, right? So let's inverse this. Okay, I'm gonna hide this, and now let's go with a brown. Let's go a little bit in the more red tone, and then now just so you guys can see what's happening. Right, this right here, this part. Oh yeah. This subtleness right here, this right here, what's happening, this transitioning now from the green into that base color into the brown is just magical for me. Right? That's slowly now, if you pull back, right, that starts looking again. Now again, we're not even at the point yet where I don't have a material, right? All that changes things up, right? I'm with a very bright material, so really my only focus right now is the painting. But there's going to be other things that come here, right? Yeah, I have a 3D printer going right now. Yeah. Okay, so again, guys, this is awesome to play with the range, and then say, give me that, right? Give me that mask. Boom. Oh, yes. Like, oh, God, look at that right there. Yes. I love that right there. Oh, yes. Okay, so, yeah. Now I'm coming up with my own thing where I'm like becoming my own Bob Ross craziness. Right? And then just slowly, oh, it's going to be, yeah, look at that. Look at that spotting that's happening right there. Oh, yeah, transition, beautiful, beautiful. Right? But I'm getting some of this because I have sculpted detail. Right? I love what's going on right there right now. And then now maybe I flip it. That's masked. And now I say, you know what? I'm going to go with a very dark green. Right? I'm going to hide that. And then start hitting it with a darker green. Right? Coming through there. And you can see that blotchiness is all from the mask, right? And then again, I can even blur this up a little bit if I want to with a little smoothing brush. And then just naturally... So there's going to be a point here where I bring in a default green and I start using that to push back some more elements. But I'm trying to use these masks to kind of create a nice blending technique between the colors, right? And don't forget, as I'm blurring, if the blur is not strong enough, like that's nice. I don't want to really touch that right there. I love what's happening right there. Maybe, yeah, this. Maybe a little bit of this, a little bit of this. Right? So there is just some subtle, like, this is too big of a change. This green and this brown, there's too big of a change. Hiding the mask is Control H. That's how you hide the mask. Okay, so this is if I'm wanting to take, you know, any kind of painting, right? But you guys also got to remember, sometimes it's fun to just take some textures, right? So let's see, what am I getting with this peaks, valleys, and everything again? Let's see what I'm getting. Let's play with this one, and let's play with the range of this one. I want to play with the range in there a little bit. I don't know why this keeps happening to me. So I want to play with that range in there, because I want to bring now maybe even some texture, like an image, in there. Saving. So I'm laying these base colors, right? And now maybe I'll go find some textures to use with these colors now. And then that's where you guys will get even more really nice realism and pop. And sometimes it's crazy textures that will give you some pretty cool results. And I'm going to show you, I'm going to give you examples. I'm going to reload this and we'll work on that green part right there for us, okay? So let me reload this guy. So again, hiding a mask is Control H. Okay, that's all you have to do to hide a mask. And that's to turn it on and off. It's the same hotkey no matter what. Okay. Let me grab the tool. It'll be faster to load. There we go. Let me move my ZBrush over here. Grab the skin tone that I want. Oh. Might help if I click the right button, people. Click. Okay. So again, this mask isn't quite cutting it for me, so I'm gonna experiment a little bit here with this masking. Okay, so masking. I've been playing with the peaks and valleys. Let's try doing more coverage with this mask. Let's see what we get with more coverage. Okay. So you can see there's just more mask now. Yeah, let's do that. I'm all right with that. Okay. So you can see there's just little blotches of mask points. All I'm doing is inversing the mask. I'm holding Control key and flipping. You know what? I think that coverage is a little too much. I'm going to drop it down. I'm going to go 45. Let's see what I get now. And this is just a trial and error, and I'm just like, okay, yeah. I like that. Okay? So what I want to do is play within here. Okay? And I want to start using images. And again, I'm in a recorded layer, right, for this painting. So I'm going to tell you right now, what sometime is we spend the whole time, like for this guy, let me go find like a really cool skin of like a lizard or whatever else. 100%. That's a good way to go. But I'm telling you right now, some crazy stuff you get is just random imagery, okay? So even like say that right there, even though it's got, that is just metal that's rusted, I'm telling you, sometimes that looks really cool on an organic model, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to load this into ZBrush by double tapping twice, okay? Then I'm going to grab this. I'm going to throw this in Spotlight. Okay, and yeah, I kind of like it bigger. Let's go like that, let's say, okay? And I'm going to say, let's do a Spotlight radius, which I prefer. So that it hides the image, but as I scroll over, I can see the image. Right? I don't know why I whistled there, but have fun with that. And now I'm going to switch back to painting. And then now here, right? My RGB intensity is completely up. This is something maybe you might want to knock down. And I'm just going to start throwing a little bit of this textured image in my model. I kind of like the blue tint. Right? Oh, yeah. Sometimes it's the craziest images that'll give you guys a very unique, cool paint on top of maybe even something that I've already started to do. Right? Something like that. And then now maybe, okay, that image was cool. And let's go ahead and let's open up Lightbox. Let's grab a different image. Let's look through here. Maybe we can find, sometimes it's just crazy stuff, like even that wood. I'm looking at some of the cracked images that we have stored in here. Here's some tree bark. You know, that might be interesting. Huh. Oh, I like that right there. I like that right there. So I'm going to double tap twice. And now that I have Spotlight loaded, it's automatically going to do that. So let's, oh, I like this a lot. This is tree bark, but I'm going to use it for along his skin right there. So I'm going to use it right here. Kind of like what's going on. I'm going to switch back to my color spray. And now I'm doing a combination, right, of imagery with what I've already painted coming through, right? And then now I have something like this. And now I turn off Spotlight with Shift Z, and now maybe I'll start saying, okay, some of this is a little too bold, so let me start blurring this through. And now don't forget, right now I'm sitting at 12 million polygons. If I want the blur to be a little bit stronger, right, that have happening through here, then I would drop down a subdivision level, right? And then maybe even drop down another subdivision level. And then now this blurring is going to be pretty powerful, right, when I blur. Right, so you can see it's pretty strong now. So be careful. Okay, maybe I might need to go up another level. I think that's a little too strong of a blur happening. So now I'm at 3 million. I want a little bit of stronger blurring happening through there. Right, so this is just another way combining, and then now I've got imagery that's kind of combining what I've started laying down as a foundational paint and grabbing crazy images. So of course you can grab some images that are 100% of just like some skin of like a real reptile or something like that, and then right? Again, I'm only looking at a little blotch of information right now, right? If I was to take this technique now and start applying this all over the model, this is really going to start to come together very nice, right? And so you can see I've got combinations here now of using mask and using whatever else, right? And then now we have the ability in ZBrush now to even mask based upon colors, right? So now I can go mask by color, and I can say mask by Polypaint, and now this head drops in, and now I can even say let's play with this brown tone right here, right? Like right through there. I can say let's pick a color, right? It's finding that brownish tone, and then now I can play with the tolerance and watch the mask actually change. So maybe a tolerance of, let's try 2. Okay, say something like that, right? Then say let's put a little bit more blur in it. Let's go more blur. Yeah, there we go. We're getting better now. Right? And then now this is a mask that I'm generating actually from the painted color that I did. Right? And so look, we can hide the material in here, and this is straight Polypaint now. This is nothing but Polypaint, right? So we're looking at that model, all we see is Polypaint. Right? So this is pretty cool to be able to do this, right? So this is being found in many places, right? So I can actually even come down here to Polypaint, okay? And we've got adjust colors. So if I click that, right, I can say, you know what? How about let's play with the tone of that brown, right? So right now the mask, right, is what I want. Let's go ahead and say let's reset, and let's pick, say, that brown tone again. Okay, in this case I'm gonna want that, and I had a tolerance of, what was I at, like 2? Yeah, like 2. And then I did a blurring of, let's go like 10. Okay, so now what I have is a mask. So the masked area, right? If I inverse this, everything that's now not masked, I can mess with now. So here I'm going to hide the mask, right? And down here, I can say, let's start playing with the hue of that. It's very subtle, but that's, in essence, people, that's what I want. I want subtlety. Here, I'll try and see if I can go more extreme with you guys. So you can see the tint changing right there. Right, and then you can grab even a color, and now this color is being added to the existing. So that's what this is doing, right, as well. This is pulling on that tint color. So maybe I want to throw a little bit of blue in there, and maybe a little bit of this. Maybe I want to desaturate it a little bit more, right? Maybe also throw a little bit RGB, and let's throw maybe some red. Oh boy. Oh boy, not that much. Just a touch. Just a touch. Right? And then when I hit OK, that's now being applied to that section. Right? So all this is just adding up, right? And then this is where now I really love what's going on through here. I love what's going on through here, right? And it's just, it's a process, right? You got to embrace it. Okay? No, you can go up and down the resolution for paint or for sculpting. It doesn't matter. So for texture, for the great question Yatkin's asking, so what would be your texture resolution? Okay, this is the best way to figure out your texture resolution. All right, I am painting on 12 million polygons. Okay. So in order to have this paint information that I'm seeing inside ZBrush to be seeing in another application, you got to have a big enough texture map to get that, right? Okay. So I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but obviously these are your map sizes, right? So 4096 by 4096, in the industry would call that 4K. 2048 by 2048 is 2K. 1024 by 1024, okay, is 1K. So all you guys have to do is take that number and multiply it against itself. Number one. Number two, your UVs are also very important. This is why when people are doing UVs, they want to take up as much UV space as they can, not have stretching, okay? So that's going to be relevant. Okay, so i.e., let's take something that already has UVs on it just to make this a faster tangent. I'm just trying to think if I want to save this. Okay, let's go ahead and we'll do a quick save of this. Okay, so we're going down the world of a little bit of a tangent here. Okay, we're doing a little bit of a tangent. Okay. So the question was asked about texture maps, right? Because obviously, if you did want to get this out of ZBrush for whatever reason, you need to know your map stuff. So let me grab the project, which is Mr. Earthquake, because he's already got UVs. And then that way, guys, you have a model here. Okay, so when we look at this guy, he's all painted up, right? And you can see there's some poly painting in here, right? Okay. If I go to my texture map, right? And I say create from Polypaint, it's taking the Polypaint information and creating a map. So you can see all the black area is dead space, right? So here's the two things you got to be conscious and aware of when you're going to create something like this. Okay, so number one is the model. This model's sitting at 1.2 million polygons. Okay, my model's sitting at 12 million polygons. Okay, so you need to have a map that it can at least host that. All right? Minimum. You got to have a map that will host that number of polygons, because that's the number of polygons the mesh has. So in this guy's case, the total body of him only equals 1.2 million. So your map needs to have a minimum that, right? So how you figure that out is multiplying these numbers. So 1024 by 1024 is around 1.1 million. Okay? That's pretty much it, right? So 2048 by 2048 pixels, that's around 4.2 million. Because if you take a calculator, right, it's going to be somewhere around that ballparky. So we'll get you the exact. So I take 2048, I times 2048, and a map that's 2048 by 24 is hosting, in essence, 4.194304 million points of information. So if you want to just remember in polygons, 4.1 million. Okay? So this model is only 1.2 million. So this map size is big enough. I technically don't need to go any bigger on this guy. A 1K map, right, it's 1.2, right? And if we do that math, 1024 by 1024, to get you the exact, that's just shy over a million. It's 1,048,000. So you can already see the map at 1K isn't even big enough to host the amount of information that's in this model. So right out the gate, I know a 1K map isn't good enough for this model. Okay, now let's take more in the crazy terms of my guy, right? Let's go to my quick saves again for him. Quick save 16. There we go. Okay, so he's 12 million, right? So I need a map that can do 12 million. So watch, if I do 4096 times 4096, that equals 16.7 million. So that right out the gate tells you minimum my map size is going to need to be a 4K on this Gremlin head, right? But now number two, which comes into play now, are my UVs. How am I going to UV this off is all coming into play, because I want to use as much of that UV space. So if you take, in fact, my webcam, right? This hand is sitting in a certain amount of area of that webcam, and then this hand is sitting in a certain amount of area of the webcam, right? So think about that as UV space. Let's say this is the ears, and if the head's now only going to be sitting here, That's not enough information, right? I would probably want to have maybe the ears. I'd want more of the face. This is so hard to do. More of the face sitting in more of the area, and then maybe have the ear, one ear area be up in here, and another ear area be down here, right? And in essence, what I want is the least amount of black space as possible, right? Because let's say this model was 16 million. And I know in a 4K map, 16 million, your mind's going to go, okay, well, I have enough, 16 million, 16 million. But what you're not factoring in are the UVs don't take up every single UV space, right? It's just not happening. Unless I do some kind of more computer-generated UVs, like what we have in ZBrush, say something like PUV tiles. I throw a PUV tile on this. This is a computer, in essence, generating UVs. That's the number one priority of this is take as much UV space as possible. And then number two, no stretching. Right? That's its number one goal here. So when I go here and say new from Polypaint, you're going to get a texture that just looks crazy. But you can see there's pretty much paint everywhere. There is no real black happening there. Right? So if you don't care about what your UVs look like, you can just straight up hit that button, and that's probably going to give you some of your best UV layout, period. If you're not really cared that you want to have visualability of your UVs. Which in the reality, some things obviously we're going to need that. Right? So hopefully that answers that question. That was definitely a tangent. We're coming up close to already me getting close to the end. So I want to move on just to give you a general understanding about rigging and my approach for this guy, how I'm going to start to rig this guy. It's actually quite easy now. Okay? I'm going to want to start using that very first ZSphere rig I made and stream one of this Gremlin. So for those that are just joining me right now for the Gremlin for the first time, I've been doing this. This is, I think we're on stream 5 for this Gremlin, if I remember right. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reload the rig that we made. Well, when we say me, I'm meaning in the stream together. Us together, I made a rig, right? So here is kind of the base mesh that I made, right? This is why I told you guys in that first stream to save this out. Okay? So, because this was made, right? We did this, and then I did this, and this was my base that maybe I started with, right? But what I want to do is use this as like a rig to start posing him. Okay? So now that I have this loaded, right? And then I have this guy loaded. Guys, what you are going to have the ability to do if you want to, now that I started sculpting him, some of his anatomy and some things have changed. So if I just append now the rig, right, to this model, it's sitting there. So if I throw on transparency, you can see the rig sitting inside of him. Now what's going to be beneficial for me is his face is definitely a lot different. He's got these ears, and you can see my rig. I've got definitely things to support most of his body, okay? But like you can see in the hands, I didn't have nails when I made him. You can see the chest is definitely a lot different, okay? Obviously the shoulders have gotten different. I've now added a neck that I want maybe have some kind of neck movement. And now I've got these massive ears, just like my doors here. And then his face, right? You can see I started with just like a pull, right? Because if you remember, if you all go back and rewatch this stream, I from the get-go made the head be a separate mesh. I didn't want that. But I want to now start adding a little bit to this rig. So here's an easy thing. You don't have to do this approach. It's just I'm showing you something else too that you can do, because we're going to be able to do it. What I'm doing right now, we're going to be able to do right in the mesh. I'm going to show you how I'm getting ready for pose, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off ghost transparency. So all there is just transparency, okay? And nothing else. Number one, when I'm dealing with this rig, this I do want to make symmetrical. Even though my sculpt's not symmetrical right now, yeah, it's the sculpt that's not, but I'm looking to make big like movements like what I'm doing with my arm right now. I want this kind of movement, or I want this kind of movement happening, okay? So what I want to do is now I want to build, I look at my rig as kind of a skeleton. That's how I look at my rig. I look, okay, this is a skeleton. And that, for my old days of animating, that's what I did in my rig in Maya anyways, okay? So the reason why I'm using this technique where I'm having this rig part of my subtools, and I'm only having transparency on. Okay, this is very... So first one of this stream. This is all important stuff I'm telling you. It's a combination of Lisa needs braces and the... Look at me! Now you guys are awake. Why I'm doing this is, watch this. I'm going to click on this ZSphere, okay? I'm going to make sure I'm in symmetry mode. That is very important, okay, that I'm in symmetry mode. Okay, and I know that as I'm scrolling over this, you guys can see there's a double circle. So there's a circle here. You can see there's a green circle camera closest to us. And if you look over here, there's a green circle too, right? That tells me I am in symmetry mode. God, this is so important, people. I can't emphasize this enough. When you're building this rig, you should 100% stay in symmetry mode. If you don't, you're going to start building a rig that's kind of off-centered a little bit and running into problems. Okay? I really take a long time to explain things. Thanks. All right, so I'm going to click the W key in move mode. I'm going to click on this. Now I'm going to go back into draw mode, and bam. That now ZSphere is sitting way out here. That's perfect. That's where I want it. So let me put it in the terms now of looking at it, the fingers. Okay? I'm going to hold the W key because I want to start from there. Back to draw mode. Boom. W key, draw mode. Boom. W key, Q. Boom. Right? Now that rig is already sitting where the nails are. Perfect. W key can also, now you can adjust your rig if you want to. You guys could, I personally would not put another ZSphere right here. You don't really need it. If you want it, like the nails shouldn't be really bending like our fingers can. It's a nail, right? It doesn't have like, if this is my finger and then this is going to be the nail, it's just a nail. It's hard. It's not going to start like doing this, right? So if this is the finger and then this is it's a nail. It's always going to stay harsh. So as the finger moves, that silhouette of the nail stays the same. Where this, you know, I don't want that. So that's why I'm not going to add another ZSphere. So you can see what the benefit is here. Is I'm actually now being able to click on the mesh. So I can switch back to ghost and say, okay, I want to start building off from the ear. So from this temporal, I'm going to do this. Okay. Then I'm going to switch out of ghost. Okay. And I'm going to say, oh, from these ZSpheres here, let me select those. So W key switches to move mode. That's going to select, switching back to draw mode with Q. I click, and then that is now sitting at that point in the ZSphere. So now I can do stuff like this. Okay, I probably want a ZSphere there, and I want a ZSphere there. Right? And then I can switch to ghost and say maybe here, I'm going to switch back to draw and put maybe another, I do want another ZSphere right there. And this is sitting already in line with the ear. And now all this is switching to move mode, and I'm doing a little bit of adjustment. If you want to move the whole chain, you click on a chain. I'm moving the whole chain. I want to move one ZSphere individually. I'm good to go. And now I'm just, again, I treat this like a skeleton, and I'm moving it in the structure. Right? So you need to make sure you're creating ZSphere that support your sculpt now, right? So on purpose, I'm going to leave this wide open. Okay? And on purpose, I'm going to leave nothing in here. And now watch what we're going to do. Okay? So now I have this model. Okay? I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just clone this one now. So now I have a rig. So I have the original rig. Okay? I don't need that anymore. So I'm just going to delete that. Okay? I've got now my new rig, which looks really funny to look at. Right? Is this rig. Okay? And I also have the rig in here, so just for the sake of argument, because you guys are going to be working maybe in this tone where you've got a rig now as one model, and you got your model as another one. So this is how easy this is going to be for us. I am now going to tell ZBrush, I want to go use that Gremlin rig number 3 now, and I want to start posing. Okay, this model is sitting total 16 million polygons. Okay, this is such a, I can't go loud enough. Look at me, because I get this all the time. people, when you're going to go pose and you want to make a model move, 16 million polygons? Ridiculous. No animator is going to try and animate with 16 million polygons. That's too dense. It's too crazy. When you're going to pose, you got to think a little bit more like an animator. An animator doesn't sit there and pose with like that 30 million polygons, 40 million, 100 million polygons. They're going to pose with the base mesh that gives them the best movement for animation. And in some cases, that might be only a total of like 100,000 polygons or maybe 50,000 polygons. Maybe reaching a million. It depends on what you're doing. So I want to have that same approach here in ZBrush. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a plugin that we have, okay, which is Transpose Master. This is made specifically for posing your character. Okay? So I see Yetin obviously talking about Unreal Engine 5. Of course, there's now all new stuff that you're going to be doing Unreal Engine 5. But I guarantee you, go find a gamer. They're not going to pose a character that's 10 million polygons. That they're still not going to do. Posing-wise, to make an animate, you're not going to do that. I just don't see the benefit in it. That's going to create too much pinching when you're trying to move things. Okay? So what I'm going to do is pretty much what you would do. Like, you're going to have a low-end cage, and then there'd be the detailed information, right? So in the ZBrush world, we've got all the detail we want. And now we've got subdivision levels. Okay? So every single one of my meshes here, none of them are in Dynamesh mode anymore. They're all got subdivision levels because this is the reason why they have subdivision levels. This is the number one reason why I don't stay in Dynamesh. Because if I'm going to want to pose this character, I can't stay in Dynamesh. It's not going to work. You're going to get crazy pinching. When you go to move something, it's going to just give you ugly pinching. Okay? I want smooth transition like it's happening to me with the arm. There's just a subtle movement happening. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the ZSphere rig here, okay? That's telling this plugin I'm going to use a rig, which we have a saved tool of the rig, right, that I've loaded. So you guys are going to load your model and load your rig. So there'll be two tools. So in my case, I've got my model and I've got my rig now, okay? And then I'm going to click this button, which stands for T-Pose Mesh. So that's telling ZBrush, when you click this, look at every single subtool that's in this gremlin, i.e. there's 10, and merge them all and drop them all to the lowest subdivision levels. So drop them all to the lowest subdivision level and merge them all as one unit, and now drop a ZSphere. Bing! So you can see I have a ZSphere in there. This is in essence, you guys could just build a rig right now from here. So that's what this button's telling ZBrush. Hey, when I go to pose, I actually want to use a rig, ZSphere rig from ZBrush, to pose with. So what I'm now going to do is, you know what? I've already built a rig because all the way in step 1, I started with ZSpheres to make the model. So I've loaded that tool. So watch this. All I got to do now is go, okay, here's the rig. I'm going to say store that rig, store TM rig. I'm going to go back to right here where you can see it says rig number 1. Right here, that is the actual mesh that's right now in like posed ready mode. So I'm going to click back on that and you'll see I have the mesh, right? And now watch this. I paste my rig, and what we're doing is now I went and copied, right, the rig that I had, okay? And now ZBrush is going through and now it's pasting it. So even though the rig was a completely separate tool, this is an easy way to do this. Okay, and if I want to turn ghost off so I can look at the model like this, I can look at the model like this, or like this. Whatever way you want to look at the model now from posing wise, it's up to you. Okay? So now what I have here, I've got the rig with my model, right? And then I'm going to ZBrush and saying, okay, what do I want to do now? I want to rig and pose. So I open up the rigging menu down here at the bottom. And you see there's a button that says bind mesh. So right now, this is not binded at all. In essence, the rig's not linked to drive the mesh. So the minute I click on bind mesh, now if I say rotation's the best thing to do this with. So I have rotation now. So I'm going to stay out of symmetry mode. If I there's a chain right here. So there's a ZSphere right there and a ZSphere right there. If I just click this, you can see now the arm starts to move. But see what else is moving. Everyone see that? So you can see the ears moving up there. You can see, look what's happening to his torso. It's moving. And the reason being is I don't have enough bone structure to support really what this character is. So what you got to look at this is there's an automatic soft binding that's happening. And wherever there's a Z-sphere, we're looking at that Z-sphere, and any geometry surrounding that Z-sphere, that's the Z-sphere that controls that. And then that bind slowly works its way down the chain and works its way up the chain until it meets the next Z-sphere. So in essence, the relationships of the Z-spheres, the closer your gap of the Z-spheres, the less of the mesh for each Z-sphere is it going to use. I.e., for example, right in here, there's two big Z-spheres right on top of themselves, right? If I start to pose with this, right, you can see that if we turn off ghost, you can see that there's even only so much of the body that's going to move. Right? So you can see pretty much from this Z-sphere down is not moving because this Z-sphere is controlling actually the bottom portion. So in essence, the lower half of his rib cage down here, getting down into the pelvic bone. So in essence, from this area right here is being controlled by that Z-sphere. And then this Z-sphere is controlling this area, right? But because I'm clicking on the chain, every other Z-sphere from this point out gets moved. So if I just want to do like just a movement like this, what I actually want to move is not the chain, I want to move the Z-sphere, right? And you can see now that Z-sphere is moving. So this is not perfect in any shape where, because you can see all the deformation that's happening that I don't like, okay? So what I'm going to do is unbind this, and he snaps back to normal. And now he's not binded. And I'm going to say, you know what? He needs a rib cage. So I'm going to, again, select this, go back to draw mode, right? And click a rib cage. So I'm going to say I need a little bit of just a definition of a rib cage, because this part, he has a rib cage in real life, right? So I'd probably say I want something like that, and say something like this. And then now this is going to be there. I'll just position it a little bit more in his body. Maybe something more like that. Okay. Back to draw mode if I want to. Right? So going from move to draw. I like to just throw a little bit, an extra Z-sphere in my ribs. So I like to do kind of something like this for my rib cage. I'm going to go ahead and say, now let's maybe go from here, right? And then I'm going to click maybe there. And I'm just going to dial this back. So have this Z-sphere control more of this part of the body. Okay. And again, select it and click on the surface. Perfect. And I'm going to add another Z-sphere there. And now let me just reposition this where I want it to be a little bit more like that. Okay, and so now just adding these Z-spheres, every one of these Z-spheres, right, is controlling a portion of the mesh in essence. Okay, so now when I go and bind, right, now I rebind everything, and I like to switch to, again, rotation. And then now when I'm moving things, there are other Z-spheres involved holding portions of the mesh, right? So now if I just rotate any one of these Z-spheres, so I could turn symmetry off now, right? And then now start moving this. You can see his rib cage is a little more realistic. And when we go to move like one of the arms, you can see this is no longer moving. What should happen? This is what should happen. I should be able to move this arm like this, right? And this should not move. And that's exactly what I have now. Right? And then you guys can move whole chains. You can move just a Z-sphere. So here's a rotation like, this is like a wrist movement, like a movement like this. Right? This movement, it's actually happening from the elbow. Right? Where this moving up the arm is happening from the shoulder. So that's why I'm moving a chain, because I want to move from the shoulder. So in essence, from this Z-sphere down, all of them move. And then so if I do this, that'll bend at the elbow now. And now if I want a little wrist movement, see, I can put a little wrist movement in. Then I can put a little movement there so his arm comes up. And then now maybe do a little bit of that, do a little bit of that. And you can see, this is why I like to use a rig. It just makes things a little bit easier for me to throw a little bit of posing. And the rig's just not, I'm not done. Like obviously the ears, right? They need some ZSpheres. The face is gonna need ZSpheres because I need something here for the jaw, right? This is not gonna cut it for the ZSpheres for his face. But you guys get the gist of this, right? This is now, in essence, my workflow for posing him. Okay, and then now we have a version of him that is sculpted. So what I want to do now is tell ZBrush, okay, take this sculpted version of him, right? And you can see I can move the nails. You can do whatever I want. You can even change surfacing here, right? And I can maybe move this leg out. So now there's that. Ah, I'm falling. Like I don't have the time here to give a perfect pose. But this is my technique that I like to use with net, and then I'll use also still a little bit of the transform line as well. Like his tail, see that? I have now ZSpheres just for his tail. Right? Because I would probably want to have that movement there too. Right? So now I'm going to say, all right, I love this. This is great. He looks awesome. Okay? I want that now to go back. So all I do is hit the T-pose sub-T. Okay? And now ZBrush goes and says, oh, I know the model that you're trying to move. Let me go ahead and move it all for you. And then it just does all the movement for me. And then there you go. Now I'm back on the sculpted version. And it took 12 seconds to do that. That's all it's telling me. And then now this is my sculpted version with the pose that I started to do. That is how I like to pose. And then I use this rig for really big movements. And then I'll switch now to the transpose line. And I'll use that now to just do some small tweaking. Right? So I might say, let me select the arm here. Okay, and then right now I've got some layer and record mode. So let me go back up to the top because we were painting, I think. Or I have, okay, no, we're good. I'm probably gonna walk down. Wait, let me make sure I wasn't at the top level. Okay, I am. All right, I thought I had a layer there. Okay, so I'm gonna drop down a little bit. And this is why I also don't use the Dynamesh. I want nice clean topology so that when I switch to say this transpose line, I can do a mask like that. Right? And then now this is sitting here and I can say, okay, this is the bone going from there to there. So now I move this, right? And I'm just positioning this a little bit more like a bone. Right? And then now I will use this for some small tweaking. Right? So things like this. So you can do this as well, right? While we're still in the other mode. You can see the nails aren't moving. Right? And that's because they're a separate subtool right now. That's why they're not moving. Right? That's what the point of the transpose is. Whoops. That's funny. Right? And then now you can do stuff like that. Right? And you can still move things around. And I didn't mask off this other arm. I had symmetry on. Let me mask off this arm completely. Right? And then now you can do this. So this is how you can pose too. You can just use this line and use the same plugin. So instead of having this on, you just hit that button. That's it. That's all you have to do. If I want to put a pose also on a layer, if I turn that little layer button on first, when we go to put everything together in the T-pose version, and you do your pose and you send it back, we're going to put the pose actually on the layer for every single subtool. So if you don't like your pose, you can actually go turn the pose on and off and even add different poses. Okay? So there you go. That's the way you can do it. It's, David Lee, as far as your question, you're on the trim brush, I'm assuming you're talking about. You're talking about these trim brush to your question. I got to get going here, unfortunately, because I got another thing I got to get to. So I can't go later, that much later today. So I'm assuming you're talking about the trim curve, this. You're talking about this brush. It doesn't work symmetrically, so you have to use mirror and weld. That's the only way you're going to be able to do this, is use mirror and weld. So now that I have this, because you can't use this brush anyways with subdivision levels, so you come down here and you do a mirror and weld and you get it on the other side. So that's how you would do that. So when you do this, then you just hit it with a mirror and weld and you'll get it on the other side. But again, keep in mind, I could stay with a clip brush and turn on the poly grouping, and even with that, this is symmetrical. And you can see every time I clip, every time I clip, I'm getting a new poly group. Damn, I'm now like having a brain fart with the Windows keyboard because I'm so used to Mac keyboard. So you could also do this as well. If you're trying to use the trim because you want a new poly group at the same time as well, you can actually do that with the clipping brushes. And they do work symmetrically, and they also do work on subdivision levels. I couldn't say if there's any plans to allow you to take a rig out of ZBrush in another program. I couldn't say. Okay, so unfortunately I gotta get going here. Let me see if there's any last minute questions that I might have missed in here. And my goal here is to try and finish this gremlin and pose him, and then maybe just do a finished off more posing. So West, to your question, yes, more ZSpheres in the rig in essence is the paint weights, right? So the more ZSpheres you add, be careful, don't go crazy. So if you're doing like an arm movement, right? Where's the camera to me? Like, don't add like ZSphere, 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 ZSphere. You're making it harder to pose. Honestly, in an arm, you should only need, honestly, I put a ZSphere at the elbow, okay? I put a ZSphere at the wrist, a ZSphere at the shoulder, and then normally I'll cap those. So I'll maybe add another ZSphere here and a ZSphere here. That way when I do the elbow, it's a very harsh, and then I use the ZSphere here as a cap to do this movement. I don't actually do it from here, I do it from here. Does that make sense? So if you look at, what I mean by that is, oh, here, let me load my rig again. So what I mean by that, hold on, let me load this, is this right here, right? There's my elbow joint. Okay, normally what I like to do, if I'm gonna do this, I'll put also a ZSphere there and a ZSphere there, right? That way, rotation-wise now, when I do this, you can see that is just a straight up elbow movement, right? In essence, bending at that elbow, right? And then I'll use this to bend at the shoulder. But what's nice is now that I have this, I'll use this ZSphere C to do kind of this movement. Oh God, where's the camera? This movement. Right? Because this is a whole movement of the arms moving. This is your forearm making that movement. Then there's wrist movements here, right? And so that's why I have this ZSphere, right? Because I can do wrist movements different directions with this guy, right? And then I have another one right here too. That's why. And then see, this is my hand flipping movement, like around like this. That's why I have that ZSphere there. But then I can also do subtle things like that. This is all I do along the arm. And then the only other thing maybe is I will cap the shoulders. That way, this shoulder movement doesn't start going really crazy down the arm into the neck. That's why I'll put these caps on. Like for an arm, that's pretty much it. I don't do, in most cases, that's usually enough. And it gives me really nice movements. And then I still have subtle movements that I can do. So to answer your question, that's what I do. And yes, the weighting is done by the number of ZSpheres. So the more ZSpheres you add, honestly, the worse it's going to get. Don't get crazy. Okay? Are you still here since you asked that question? So, David, I would say honestly, I'd rewatch these videos because this Gremlin I'm sculpting, trying to go realistic as possible with him. So if you would watch any of these past streams, that might help you. Unfortunately, that's like a whole stream topic, and I would recommend, honestly, the #1 stream I would recommend for realistic sculpting. Hold on, let me readjust. My microphone's in the way right now. Is Chris Costa did a fabulous, realistic, photorealistic in one of our ZBrush summits. Honestly, that'd be the #1 video I'd tell you to go watch. Hold on, let me get it for you. And I'll put it in the chat. #1, just start with that video. All right, and let me go in here. Chris Costa, who's an amazing artist who works at ILM, and he also teaches. He's got his own little school that he teaches. Like, you're not going to beat this video. There's not anything I can tell you. There's no way I'm going to beat what Chris Costa talks about in this video. Period. Just watch that. And then if you want, I'm building this Gremlin from beginning to end. And you can go rewatch all those as well. Okay, so I want to also remind everybody that, again, we just released a new version. So it's 0.1.4. So you guys, your ZBrushes should be telling you that. Okay, so it's 2020.1.4 is now released. Don't forget as well, there's other resources here. So to your question, you can go here to your free ZBrush Z Classroom. You can even put searches in here, and you can put stuff in here, right? Whatever you want. You can put extractor brushes, and then extract will pop up, and anything dealing with extract will pop up. You can put in here, you can say Z Remesher, and then there's Z Remesher, and all the videos that deal with Z Remesher will pop up. So this is a great resource. You can look at just what we consider very beginner videos. You can be on more advanced. Okay, or you can even look at from the home. We've broken them off into like, okay, all the videos that are pretty much getting started, and all the sculpting videos, texturing videos, posing videos, rendering videos, and then plugin videos. Okay, so this could be very helpful for you as well. Please also keep in mind, everybody, I've been in ZBrush the whole time, right? There's also ZBrush Core. And currently, obviously, there's a trial even ZBrush right now. So I've been using ZBrush 2020 here. So if you've been watching and you don't have ZBrush, this is a great way to get in. We have a trial of ZBrush. Okay. We also have multiple ways for you to get into our family of the ZBrush world. So if this stream for some reason got you sparked, you're like, I'm ready to go. Okay, you can actually do subscription service of ZBrush. So we have $39.95 per month for just ZBrush, or you can do $179.95 every 6 months, or a perpetual license for $895, which that license has given you free upgrades. We haven't charged for an upgrade for 20 years. So someone that bought the license 19 years ago has gotten every single version for the last 19 years. Okay, so you have this ability with ZBrush. You also have ZBrush Core, which also has a subscription for $9.95 per month. Like, you could pretty much sculpt relatively the Gremlin that I've done in there. There's a bunch of techniques, though, in the videos that aren't in Core. Or you can buy Core straight up for $179.95. Okay, so these are just different ways you guys can get in to ZBrush. Like I said, either you have a trial, okay, right here, or you can just go into one of our subscriptions or become full family too and get one of the perpetual license. And then, of course, don't forget about, obviously, Z Classroom. But honestly, another great place to learn is our ZBrush Central. Again, I'm on there on a regular every single week. So if you guys did also want to communicate with me and you're building something, in the chat now is my username. Okay, so for ZBrush Central. So if you put the @PixoPaul, I'll get an email to my Pixologic email address. So if you're trying to communicate through there. Hossein Diba is actually, just so you know, a little spoiler, he's going to be an upcoming ZBrush artist for the ZBrush Masters course, the specials that we're doing. I'm sure you've seen the next one coming up. We just finished with Ben Moreau. And then next week, next Tuesday at 3 Pacific is going to be Magdalena de Della. Yes, you can buy ZBrush and Keyshot. In fact, we worked out a really great deal with them and worked with them to already discount Keyshot. So ZBrush, you can go one of these routes, okay, since you're asking. And in the ZBrush plugins, there's Keyshot. And what we had them do is they actually made a special version of Keyshot that's only for ZBrush users. And so you can get either the HD version or the Pro version. And then we made a bridge, okay, that allows you with one click of the button, send everything over to Keyshot. Everything you're looking at inside of ZBrush will go over except for live Boolean and now also opacity of a texture. But for everything else, even ZSpheres will go into Keyshot. So you can get into Keyshot HD, okay? Here's your Pro price and your HD, but you also need to buy the bridge. Okay, so Pro is $500, $550, $549, and the HD version is $349. To give you guys an idea of this, the HD version normally in Keyshot's $1,000. The Pro version of Keyshot's $2,000. So you guys are getting like 75% off of this. And it's the same product. You just can't, the only thing you can't do is import export like OBJs or anything like that. You can't import export. You can only send your stuff from ZBrush to Keyshot, which of course you can import anything you want into ZBrush as well. So that's how you could do that. So this is actually a package deal, discounting Pro or HD for you. So that's a way, so since you asked that question, to do that. Okay. So there you have it. Thank you again for another exhilarating Gremlin stream. Right? Hopefully you guys took away a lot from this. I've been actually having a lot of fun sculpting this Gremlin. And again, I'm going to keep going for this. Yes, we give free upgrades to ZBrush. Keyshot we don't control. It's not our software. So I can't tell you. Keyshot's not free upgrades like you're getting with ZBrush. There's not, I don't know of many applications that give free upgrades of that. It's a paid software, right? So, but yes, if you bought ZBrush, we haven't charged for an upgrade in 20 years. So I can't say if this is going to go forever, but it's been 20 years. Keyshot's not our product, so we can't control that. And so again, tomorrow I'm streaming again with Solomon for our second Clubhouse. So tomorrow at noon Pacific time. And then I'm doing another Clubhouse with Joseph Drust on Wednesday at 11 a.m. And then don't miss Magdalena again. It's been showing you guys the whole stream next Tuesday. Right? So, unfortunately, I have to go. I have some other things I have to get going to. I really appreciate you guys taking time out of your night and your day or afternoon, wherever you are in the world, to sit with me and go through this. Hopefully you guys found some great techniques for painting. And then obviously all that stuff is doing from painting would all apply sculpturally. All those masking techniques, you could apply sculpturally as well, right? And then hopefully that rigging little demo quick one I gave you helps you out a lot. If not, I'm going to stream again. In fact, actually, as an experiment, next Friday, it's going to be late night with ZBrush. I'm actually going to flip the stream, and we're going to stream at 11 p.m. Pacific time instead of 11 a.m. Pacific. So next Fridays, my stream's going to be at night. It's not going to be in the afternoon. So just make sure you go to the schedule and you take a look at that. Again, if you want to see the schedule, you can just go to ZBrushLive.com, which I just put in the chat, and then there's a calendar section right there. Okay, so I would recommend that. So right here is ZBrushLive.com. Okay, it'll get redirected to Pixologic.ZBrushLive.com, and then there's a calendar right here, and you can see all the upcoming streams that are coming up. There's the Clubhouse tomorrow. There's Magdalena's stream next Tuesday. There's mine and Joseph's Clubhouse, and it'll continue on. And you can look at this in an agenda form or in a calendar form. Yeah, I think I'm going to do more Gremlin next Friday night. Yeah. I'm hoping to have a lot more sculpt done of the Gremlin. Maybe even I've got the whole head done and I'm down on the body. I would love to say I'm going to have all the sculpting done and I'm moved into just straight up painting, but probably not happening. You want to see my Gundam? I haven't touched that model in like a long time, but I'd like to go back to that for sure. All right, well, thank you. I really appreciate you guys being a part of this. Have, again, a delicious evening. This is Paul Gaboury for Pixologic on ZBrush Live. I'm